and welcome back to the Striha Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Parker Striha, and on today's episode, we are going to be discussing the massive NFL trade news that broke earlier today. I am by no means a professional, but I do love talking about sports, so thank you for joining me. As I said, there was some massive NFL trade news that broke earlier today. It was just a couple hours ago that the news came out that the Seattle Seahawks and Denver Broncos have agreed on terms that will send quarterback Russell Wilson to Denver. With this came completely out of left field. I kind of figured that the Broncos were going to be in the quarterback market, like really, really big players in the quarterback market, just because Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater are not franchise guys, in my opinion. But with reports coming out that I can believe Russell Wilson wanted out of Seattle. The team wasn't really doing a lot to help him, in my opinion. That offensive line was really bad, and there's some really big holes on that defense. So I can understand why he would have wanted out of there. But with this trade going through, it means that Russell Wilson did want Denver. And that doesn't mean Denver was like his number one destination if he goes, but Wilson did have a full no trade clause on his contract. So if Seattle was going to trade him anywhere, he had to approve of the trade. Otherwise, it would just be completely nullified. But yes, Russell Wilson is now going to the Denver Broncos to create one of the best quarterback divisions in the NFL and maybe in NFL history, with Derek Carr, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, and now Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is 33 years old, however, and he will be 34 in November. So there may be some questions about how long he'll be in Denver, but with guys like Tom Brady playing until they're 44, I don't really know how much of a concern that age is going to be. He was a third-round pick in 2012, so it's not like he was even a premier. A third-round pick's still a pretty high pick, but it's not like he was a priority for them. I don't know if that really makes sense. He wasn't a stupid high draft pick to where you would have expected him to be the franchise guy when he got drafted. And in his 10-year career so far, he has 37,059 passing yards to go along with 292 passing touchdowns and 87 interceptions. He also has 4,689 rushing yards and 23 rushing touchdowns. Russell Wilson was the quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks team that defeated the Broncos in Super Bowl 48 in complete domination. I don't exactly remember if that was all. It obviously wasn't all defense because the offense had to do something, but I think that team heavily relied on their defense, with Russell Wilson still being super young when that game happened. But for Denver, he does have 2 years and $51 million left on that contract. So I believe a contract extension will be coming soon to keep him in Denver for more than just those 2 years. But the full trade details are, as of right now, Denver is receiving Russell Wilson and a 2022 fourth-round draft pick, and the Seattle Seahawks are receiving quarterback Drew Lock, defensive end Shelby Harris, tight end Noah Fant, 2 first-round draft picks, 2 second-round draft picks, and a 5th-round draft pick. So Denver gave up a pretty hefty amount to get Russell Wilson, and honestly, I think he honestly could have went for more. I don't really know how much more, but a quarterback of Russell Wilson's, I don't know what the word exactly is, but a quarterback of Russell Wilson's caliber, you'd think would go for either. I think Denver gave up enough to get him, but the argument can be made both ways that they also could have given up too much or given up too little. So I think the arguments are obviously going to come out that which side won. And as of right now, I think Denver won this trade. Obviously, the draft picks are huge because those are potentially the future of your franchise. But how many of those players that you're going to draft are going to be needle movers are, I think, a good way to put it. How many of those picks are actually going to change the future of your team? Because not all draft picks are hits. A lot of them are busts. But Seattle is, like I said, Seattle is getting Drew Lock. he has potential to be good. He has the arm for it, but I don't necessarily see him as a franchise guy. Like I said earlier, I think he'll be Seattle's starting quarterback for the year. I don't know if they'll go out and try to trade for or sign anyone. I've heard there's talks they're going to try to trade for Deshaun Watson, which I personally think is really stupid. Deshaun Watson's a great quarterback when he's on the field, but with all of the stuff going on with him, all of the allegations against him, and I just don't think that would be a good move for Seattle. They're also super low on draft capital, if I do remember right. So I don't think it would be a great idea to immediately send their draft capital away as soon as they're getting any of it. But Drew Lock, he could be good, but this will be the last year of his contract, in my opinion. This not in my opinion. This is the last year of his contract. He was a second-round pick a few years back, so he will be up for a contract extension. It remains to be seen if he'll even get one or how big one will be if he does receive it. So that will be a question that Seattle will need to answer. Shelby Harris is an older defensive end, and I don't think he even fits Seattle's scheme very well, but they can't really trade or cut him this year or next year they can trade or cut him, but this year it's just not feasible for them. He carries a cap hit of, I believe, $10 million with a dead cap hit of $11 million this year, so it makes no sense to get rid of him. And then Noah Fant, who, in my opinion, other than the draft picks, is the centerpiece of this trade that Seattle is getting. He's a great young tight end. I believe he was drafted 11th or 12th overall a couple years back. I love him. I think he's one of my favorite tight ends in the league. So it'll be interesting to see what he does in Seattle. However, I don't know if he'll instantly be their starter. I think he will, but Seattle does have guys like Will Dissly and Gerald Everett and Colby Parkinson. Colby's obviously not a huge name tight end, not going to be their starter, but it'll be interesting to see. He's also going to be up for a contract extension really soon. He has a fifth-year option that I believe is exercised next year, but then after that he will be an unrestricted free agent, so they need to get something done with that. But overall, I don't think this trade is horrible for either team. I think both teams are kind of getting what they need right now. I think Seattle, obviously with Seattle getting rid of Russell Wilson, they're obviously not in a win-now mode. So I think they need to kind of just embrace not necessarily a full rebuild and just completely destroy the team and completely tank, but I think it would be wise for them to look over their roster and get rid of certain players that either they don't want to pay or they know they can get good value for. I've heard they're open to trading Tyler Lockett, and I'm sure other players are also likely to be on the trading block. I've seen a lot of tweets about potentially trading for DK Metcalf. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. I can see them getting rid of Tyler Lockett before DK Metcalf, but you never know. I don't think either receiver is amazing. I love Tyler Lockett. I don't think he's, like I said, I don't think he's amazing, but I think the argument can be made that he's a top 10, top 15 receiver in the league, if not a little bit higher, but I think there's a tier of guys that are just above him that I don't think he's a part of yet. So it'll be interesting to see how Seattle does handle this whole situation. They could end up getting rid of a lot of guys to free up cap space and kind of just reload their team more so than rebuild, because there obviously are some great players on that team. A player I wouldn't be surprised to see moved is Bobby Wagner, who has been a huge piece of that Seattle defense for years, and he's arguably been one of the best linebackers in the league since he came into the league. But this year he does have a really, really big cap hit with very minimal dead cap hit if he does get traded or released. So it'll be interesting to see what Seattle does with him, if they try to release him and bring him back on a more team-friendly contract or just completely restructure the contract. I think they'd be stupid to get rid of him just because he has been a huge piece of that team, not only the defense, but he's, like I said, he's been arguably the best linebacker in the league for at least a decade, half a decade, however long he's been in the league. So they'd be really stupid to get rid of him, but who am I to say? I think Seattle, obviously, with this move, is going down in the standings a little bit. I think they're going to have a down year this year just because I don't really know how much I trust Drew Lock. I don't trust their offensive linemen. They have a good tight end now. They have some good receivers, good running backs that I really like. But like I said, offensive line needs to get figured out. Defense needs to get figured out in a lot of spots. So I think it's pretty safe to say that they'll probably finish 4th in their division this year. And will probably be picking high. I don't know how high exactly, but because, I can still see this team pulling out a couple wins and drafting higher than fans would like. But this next draft class, I'm not sure who exactly is going to be in it, so I'm not sure what a premier pick would look like for the Seattle Seahawks next year. But for the Broncos, getting a guy like Russell Wilson, I think instantly puts them in contention for a Super Bowl run. They already have the defense for it. They have the running backs for it. They have the receivers for it. Their offensive line is really good, in my opinion. The only question on that offense, I think, is tight end. I don't really know who they have on that roster for tight end other than Albert Okwuegbunam from Missouri, who I really like, by the way. I think he's a really good tight end if he's given the chance, but I still don't know if he is good enough to be a starting tight end on a Super Bowl team. I'm sure Denver will end up bringing in someone else in free agency, if not drafting a top tight end, but I think they're easily going to be in Super Bowl contention this year. I'm sure their Super Bowl odds instantly went up as soon as this trade was made, but it will not be easy for them, even though they do have the defense and the quarterback for it now, because in their division, like I said, Justin Herbert, Derek Carr, and Patrick Mahomes, who's regarded as one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And then there's guys like Josh Allen. There's Lamar Jackson. It's just not going to be easy for them. Joe Burrow. It's not going to be easy for the Broncos to get to the playoffs just because they're most likely not going to win their division unless something drastic happens with the Chiefs. So they're going to be fighting for a wild card spot. And with the AFC being as talented as it is and as crowded as it is, you're not guaranteed a spot. But I think they're going to be, if not a 5 through 7 seed, I think they'll be the first team out. I think they're going to be competitive all year. And probably they're going to push for a playoff spot, and I'd be shocked if they don't get one. But I guess that all remains to be seen. I think this, like I said, I think this is a great trade for both teams. And I guess only time will tell how good it will be for both teams, because both teams, I think, are going to have drastically different seasons this year, with one team possibly competing for a Super Bowl and the other possibly competing for a really, really high draft pick next year. So, as always, I'm your host, Parker Striha, and this has been the Striha Sports Podcast. Our random sport fact of the day is that Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is the only city where all major As always, I'm your host, Parker Striha, and this has been the Striha Sports Podcast. Our random sport fact of the day is that Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is the only city where all major league sports teams have the same colors of black and gold. As always, thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to hit that notification bell for whenever a new video gets posted.